This is Mark in the Center for Online Learning and Innovation. Here at Canisius, we have powerful tools for data gathering via the web. Google Forms doesn't have all the features of other tools, but it's easy to use, reliable, and friendly to those who have less experience doing work on the internet. It's easy to find videos and other tutorials on the web that show you how to compose questions and build forms. But in this video, I'll go over some features and provide some tips for using Google Forms in Canisius Google accounts. For Canisius faculty and staff, the simplest way to get to Google Forms in your Google Drive is via My Canisius or the portal. You'll find the link to your Google Drive under the My Applications menu. And in fact, I'm going to drag that link up to my favorites area so that every time I log in the portal or My Canisius, it'll be waiting here for me. This link takes you to your Google Drive's main screen, showing your files and folders. For practical purposes, Google treats a form as just another file type, although as we'll discover in a few minutes, Google also likes to link a form with a spreadsheet, another file type here in Google Drive. The spreadsheet contains the data that the form collects, so it's helpful to consider both files essentially as a set. For example, Google Forms Demo 2017, here's the form with a purple icon, and here's the spreadsheet containing the data from the form with a green icon. If you need to create a new form from scratch, go to the New button, hover over or click More, and here's Google Forms. This takes you right into the editor for a brand new empty form. We'll create the spreadsheet later when we need it. On the other hand, you may need to contribute to a form or get data from a form that someone else created and shared with you. If they successfully shared the form and its data spreadsheet with your Canisius account, you'll see it under Shared with Me. And here's an example from another Canisius Google account. When you first enter a form, you'll see the form editor where you can add or change questions. But let's look at other features that are often important for particular projects or just your day-to-day work in Google Forms. Notice that you can return to your Google Drive at any time without closing the form, since your drive is still open in another browser tab. On the other hand, if you click this arrow, it does not take you back to your Google Drive space, but instead to a special menu screen specifically for Google Forms. This shows you all the forms in your Google Drive, whichever folders they may be stored in, and can be useful if you've got a lot of files and folders in your drive. Otherwise, I find I'm rarely here, and when I'm finished working with a form, I simply close the tab for the form and go back to my Google Drive in the previous tab. I mentioned that Google likes to store data collected by a form in a spreadsheet within your Google Drive. This is a great feature, but it's important to understand that the form itself also stores data collected. You can see that data if you click the Responses tab in the Form Editor. Here you see some handy at-a-glance charts and graphs, and you can even view individual submissions to the form. This can be a quick way to see how your data collection is going, but obviously much more can be done with the data over in the spreadsheet. To get to the spreadsheet, click the green Google Sheet icon. If you haven't yet done this in a form, it will ask you to create that Google Sheet. If you'd like to remove all data from a form and attach its current spreadsheet, and in the process create a new spreadsheet in order to run the form again and collect new data, see our video tutorial specifically on that procedure. If you need to share a form with a colleague, bear in mind that you probably want to share the Google Sheet containing data collected also with that colleague as well. To share the form, I click the three vertical dots up in the far right of the Form Editor screen, not in the Form Editor itself, but up here instead. and I choose Add Collaborators. Then I'll enter in the email address of the person with whom I'd like to share the form. To share the data spreadsheet, the process is similar. In this case, I click the button Share, and then I add the email address of the person with whom I'd like to share it. I'm going to return to the sharing window, and I'm going to click Advanced. In the sharing settings box, both in Google Sheets and Forms, you'll get a list of those people with whom you've shared specifically by name the particular sheet or form, or for that matter, Google Doc or other file type in Google Drive. And if I want to remove someone from sharing, that is, no longer grant them access to this particular item, a Google Sheet, I'll click the X to the right of their name. Here's another tip. When you share with somebody, Google grants you the option of sending a notification email to this individual telling her or him that you've shared these items. In actual practice, this can cause some confusion, since those less familiar with Google Drive click the links in the email and try to open it in a browser where they are potentially not logged in, or worse, logged into a personal Gmail account and not their Canisius Google Drive. So when working with folks that have less experience with Google Drive, I skip these notifications and instead tell them directly to log into their Canisius Google Drive via the portal or My Canisius, and then look in their Shared With Me section. There's another feature that I uncheck or disarm because it can cause some confusion among those less familiar with Google Drive. That's a requirement that respondents must be logged in to their Canisius Google account or any Google account in order to fill out my form. To get to these features, I click the Settings gear icon on the upper right. I then uncheck Restrict to Canisius College users, and I make sure that Limit to One Response is left unchecked. Canisius Google accounts, by default, check this box on every new Google form, but this one is left unchecked. If Restrict to Canisius College users is checked, somebody not logged in to any Google account gets a login screen when they try to fill out my form. But that screen does not specify that they need to log into their Canisius Google account. This can cause some confusion. If they are logged into a non-Canisius Google account, they see a screen telling them that they are not authorized to fill out the form, but that page doesn't really make it clear that they could log into their Canisius Google account to fill the form out. So I find that this feature is best shut off and not used. If Limit to One Response is checked, those who go to fill out my form will be told they must sign in with a Google account. If this is a survey or a ballot, it's likely to drive away at least some participants. If it's a sign-up sheet, I'm probably not so concerned with limiting any respondent to one response. So I don't bother with this. I just don't use this feature. If you absolutely need to limit access to a data gathering form, or track participation among a particular group of respondents, or limit each respondent to only one response, you probably need to use a more robust data gathering toolset. For Canisius users, that's Qualtrics. See our Qualtrics tutorials for details. If you'd like to know anytime someone submits a response to your form, you can have a notification email sent to your Canisius email automatically. There's two ways to do this. In Google Forms, click Responses, and then go to the three-dot menu within the form editor itself, rather than the one in the far upper right. Choose Get Email Notifications for New Responses. In this case, I've disabled it because I had it enabled previously. so I'll just re-enable it. It's a simple on or off toggle. You can also do this after you've established your data collecting spreadsheet over in the spreadsheet itself. And this gives you a few different options. I go to Tools, Notification Rules. Here, I can choose whether I want an email every time there's any kind of change to this Google Sheet, or just an email that tells me how many times there were changes in the last 24 hours, a daily digest. I also can choose any changes that are made instead of simply a user submits a form. If I choose a user submits a form, it'll tell me anytime somebody has submitted data to the form itself. If I choose any changes that are made, it tells me anytime anything has changed on this spreadsheet. So, for example, if someone in my office needs to send an email in reply to a respondent to the form, we can keep track of whether or not anyone in the office has sent that email by adding an additional column and just putting, for instance, an X there or something like that. I'll get an email notification if any of my colleagues sent that email out and added the X in this column. So now I know I don't have to go in and do that. Bear in mind, though, that each person with whom the form or sheet is shared must set up their own notifications for themselves. If your colleague set up a notification to send to her email, either from the form or the Google Sheet, it will only go to her email. You need to set up any and all notifications that serve your email from a Google Sheet or a Google form.